Chapter 5. A Voice That Cannot Sing. Constance decided that she would have to back off for a while. She'd find ways to get to the root of his psychosis if she was patient, she believed. She'd become his friend, an ally, and then, when he was safe with her, he'd share his innermost feelings of his soul, and she would bring him triumphantly out of the world of his delusions into the world of reality. She was imagining what it would be like to change someone's life. Oh, how proud her parents would have to be of her, if they were alive. But how proud she would feel of herself. She lingered on these feelings for quite a while, but then awkwardly, crashing through the swinging door that led to the kitchen, came the butler with a silver tray full of food and 2 glasses of juice. He practically dropped the tray on the coffee table near the sofa where she sat, and as he walked back towards the kitchen, she heard him mumble, "Egg salad on rye." The sandwiches did look good, and John told her that she'd be foolish to pass them up, but she didn't know whether to wait for John or to go ahead. While she was trying to decide what to do, she heard Uncle John's voice come from upstairs. "Are those egg salad sandwiches on rye that I smell, Connie Lou? You go ahead and get started. I'll be right down." Constance took 1/2 of the sandwiches and stiffened it before taking a bite. She'd never noticed egg salad to have much of a smell at all. John must be very sensitive to aromas, she thought, and then she took a bite. Ambrosia! Uncle John was right. Anyone who passed up on these was a fool. Uncle John joined her, dressed as he had been the day before, and he looked comfortable. As they ate, they both commented on what a treat the food was. And when they finished, Uncle John announced, It's time that we do another ornament." He kept all his ornaments in a special case, and from a special case of Christmas ornaments, he selected one that looked like a very old writing tool. When John presented it to Constance for her inspection, she could still see ink stains on the tip. When she handed the pen back to John, he walked over to the tree and was about to place it there, with 2 other ornaments, when something shocked Constance. A thought seized her brain and made her captive to its wishes. She silently raced to the piano and began pounding on the keys with reckless abandon. When Uncle John's head spun around to see what was the matter, she saw in his eyes a kind of bewildered panic that she'd experienced herself not too long ago. When she had his complete attention with grand dramatic effect, she said, "Don't put it so close to the other one, Uncle John. It's a big tree." Her laughter started as a mischievous little chuckle that emanated from her brain. Then it swept through her body like a fire that hit full strength in her stomach. And before she could contain it, she was laughing uncontrollably. It was contagious. John began laughing a bit himself at the joke she had just played on him. But it grew to his own belly laugh simply because his nurse was laughing so crazily. She tried so hard to stop, but just when she thought she had herself under control, another wave of laughter would overcome her. Tears came to her eyes, and her sides ached. It was all full of the laughter of the lifetime that she had just been saving it up, and it was all being released in one afternoon. She had not planned it, rehearsed it, or even thought about it. It just happened. And it marked her second great surrender in as many days to the innocent joy of laughter. When the laughter finally died down, Constance braced herself for the embarrassment she expected, but it never came. Maybe it was the environment, maybe it was the season, maybe it was her patient who made her feel safe somehow. She didn't know why, but she felt that enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders, and she was renewed. Uncle John still had a pen in his hand, and he took it with him to the piano. He placed it as a source of inspiration on the piano's music stand, and then began to play. The music would underscore the story he was about to tell. Connie Lou, I want to tell you about this pen. I received it from a man who told me this story late one evening, many Christmases ago. We were talking about inspiration, where it comes from, why it comes, how it changes us. You know. And then he spoke of a time when he felt completely uninspired, without direction, lost. Well, then he had a dream. In my dream, he told me, I was a very young angel in a very heavenly place. When a trumpet was sounded and an announcement was made, all the angels were invited to audition for a choir that would announce the holy birth. The excitement and anticipation caused my little angel heart to almost burst. When my moment arrived, I stood before the musical tribunal and sang, and sang, and sang. No one interrupted me or sniggered because, well, this was heaven. But I knew immediately that I would not be invited to join the choir for one obvious reason. I couldn't sing. I felt the music, but I couldn't get that feeling to come out of my voice. The grand chorus master smiled and nodded to his chief assistant to show me out. But this isn't fair, I pleaded. If you could hear what's in my heart, you'd let me sing. I ran back towards the choir master and begged him to give me another chance. And as I did, music began to fill the room. And I recognized it, for it was music coming directly from my innocent little tender heart. As John played the young angel's forgotten carol, Constance heard instruments from an orchestra, faint at first, then loud enough to be in the room with them. And then she heard a choir singing glorious hallelujahs. How could that be? Where was sound coming from? Was it her patient's psychosis contagious? Had she been seduced into his delusions? She had nowhere to turn for answers, so she surrendered to the music. It filled her in ways the answer she was seeking never could. Then, with full orchestral underscore, John completed his story. All the other angels stood motionless and amazed as they heard the sound. And when my carol to the king was over, the grand chorus master stood. "Oh, my little one," he said, "you have so much to give, and your time will come." "Then I can't sing with the choir?" I looked at him to change his mind, but he only shook his head and smiled. "You have a different voice, but it will be heard. Centuries from now it will be heard. More orchestras and choirs than you can now imagine will be giving the music of your heart a voice that will echo through the time." As John played the final strains of this forgotten carol's melody, Constance heard a descant from the unseen orchestra. She recognized the counter-melody as Joy to the World, which turned into the Hallelujah chorus, and ended as a finality from For unto us a child is born. "It was Handel," Constance exclaimed. "The pen. This is the pen of George Frederick Handel. The one who wrote the Messiah. The one that he wrote the Messiah with, too," John clarified. "I just can't believe it," she said. "No," John corrected her, "you won't believe it. There's a big difference." "What do you mean?" she said defensively. "Well, you made up your mind a long time ago that something like this could never happen, and so you've chosen not to believe it could be true." "But it doesn't make any sense." "And why doesn't it?" he asked. "Because things like that just don't happen." She was getting angry. "Says who?" "Says my mother." She couldn't stop the words from just racing out of her mouth. And when she said them, she sounded like a little schoolgirl, the one she once was. She knew that John could have made a field day out of a response like that, and she was waiting for him to tease her like all the children at school used to. But instead of attacking, he retreated. "Connie Lou, I'm sorry. You don't have to believe me. There's nothing wrong with you because you can't believe me. The most natural thing in the world is to question things and to want to know why. You haven't failed. You haven't done anything wrong. You are my friend, and I apologize for sounding like I was judging you. Please forgive me." No one had ever asked for Constance's forgiveness before, so she wasn't sure how to give it. No one had ever told her before that she was all right. People had always told her she was competent. But until this moment, she had never been told she was all right. She'd never been told it was fine to feel and to question and challenge and disagree with an adult. She'd never been treated like this before, so she didn't know how to act. Uncle John then took the pen that he claimed belonged to Handel, and he dipped it into a little ink bottle that was in the ornament case. And then he wrote something on a piece of paper, blew the fresh ink dry, and then handed the piece of paper to Constance. Before she could read it, he told her that it was time for his nap, and he left the room. This note read, "Connie Lou, I'm afraid you're stuck with me, and I hope you will learn to like me someday, because you can't make me not like you. John." Constance held the note written in the same pen that supposedly wrote the glorious music of Handel's Messiah. She still couldn't believe it had, but she could believe one thing. Today, that pen had written something beautiful.